Here is your full 1800-word emotional YouTube-style story with a strong hook, smooth pacing, 2 long chapters, and no headings. I kept paragraphs plain and flowing exactly as you asked, and included the YouTube-style intro and outro lines. NNBH video ko like, subscribe or share zero or carrion, kyunk aaj ki kahani aap ka dil hila deji. Because sometimes, the smallest kindness from the most unexpected person, becomes the miracle someone was silently praying for. A little girl standing on the edge of a meltdown. A single dad janitor just finishing a double shift. A billionaire mother watching from the shadows, shocked at what she saw. And none of them knew that this moment would change all of their lives forever. Ya kahani aap kon tak jor kar rakaji. Let's begin. Mark had always believed that life had strange ways of testing people, especially those who never complained. As a single dad, raising his 8-year-old daughter Lily alone while working as a school janitor wasn't the life he had dreamed of, but it was the only life he had. Every morning, before the sun touched the rooftops, he tied his faded boots, kissed his daughter's forehead, and whispered the same promise he had been whispering for years, "Daddy's got you." Always. He meant it with every tired heartbeat. That day had been unusually long for Mark. The middle school halls he cleaned were bigger than his spirit sometimes, stretching endlessly like reminders of how small his paycheck was. His shirt smelled faintly of disinfectant, and his back ached the way it always did after mopping 3 buildings. But he kept going. He always kept going. Meanwhile, across the city in a high-rise office that touched the sky, stood Evelyn Rowe, CEO of Rowe Industries, Billionaire, and mother to 9-year-old Sienna. Evelyn was a woman used to closing $100 million deals before breakfast, a woman who commanded rooms with a single glance. But no amount of money or power had prepared her for her daughter's growing anxiety. Sienna had been having panic episodes, sudden emotional collapses that came out of nowhere, leaving Evelyn feeling helpless, a feeling she hated, but one she was starting to know well. Her assistant had arranged for Sienna to attend a trial day at the school where Mark worked, hoping a smaller environment would help her. Evelyn, stressed and afraid of another breakdown, decided to observe discreetly from a distance. She didn't plan to be seen. She didn't plan to interact. She just wanted to feel like she had a little more control. But fate doesn't wait for perfect timing. During recess, Sienna's anxiety hit without warning. One moment she was standing still, and the next she was spiraling. Her breathing quickened, her hands shook, tears blurred her vision as the world began to feel too loud, too bright, too heavy. Teachers called for help, but none reached her in time. Except one person. The janitor, tired, sweaty, still carrying a bucket in one hand, knelt beside her gently, as though she were made of glass. Mark didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't try to force her into calmness like others often did. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small plastic tube, and blew a soft, shimmering bubble into the air. Then another. And another. The wind carried the bubbles around them, floating lightly like tiny orbs made of peace. Sienna blinked through her panic, mesmerized. Her breaths began to fall in rhythm with the drifting shapes. Mark smiled softly. "My daughter calls these magic," he whispered. "She says bubbles make worries float away. Want to try with me?" Her trembling eased. She nodded. He handed her the wand, steadying her small fingers with his gentle ones. Together they blew a stream of bubbles, watching them swirl into sunlight. And little by little, the panic loosened its grip on her chest. Mark didn't know anyone was watching. He didn't know that behind the half-open classroom door, Evelyn stood frozen, stunned. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. She had paid therapists, specialists, experts, yet none had managed to reach her daughter the way a humble janitor just had, with nothing but kindness and bubbles. Her throat tightened. For the first time in months, Sienna looked peaceful. And Evelyn didn't know what to feel, gratitude? Shame? Awe? She only knew that everything she thought she understood was suddenly challenged by a man she had never noticed before. That was the moment their worlds quietly collided. Chapter 1 did not feel like a beginning. It felt like something the universe had been waiting to write. But the real storm was still ahead, the storm that would bring them together again in a way none of them expected. Evelyn waited until school ended. She approached Mark near the storage room, her heels clicking too loudly, her presence too powerful for the quiet space. He turned, startled to see her standing there, dressed in a white suit that probably cost more than he made in 2 months. "You helped my daughter today," she said softly. "Thank you." Mark nodded awkwardly. He was used to being invisible, not suddenly noticed by someone like her. Just did what anyone would do. "No," she replied gently. "Not anyone." She asked if she could talk. Mark hesitated but agreed. They stood in the back courtyard while children ran past. Evelyn told him about Sienna's struggles, how she often felt powerless as a mother, despite being powerful everywhere else. Then she said something that surprised even her. "I don't know how you did it, but you helped her. Would you consider helping me understand her better?" Mark blinked. "Ma'am, I'm just a janitor. You're someone my daughter trusted in her most vulnerable moment. That matters to me more than titles." For the first time in a long while, someone saw him, really saw him, not as a worker, not as a nobody, but as a father who knew how to comfort a child in pain. He agreed. Not for money. Not for attention. But because he knew what fear looked like in a child's eyes, and he couldn't walk away from it. A few days turned into weeks. Mark spent time with Sienna during lunch breaks, teaching her grounding tricks that had helped Lily, breathing with the bubbles, naming colors around her, tapping her fingers rhythmically. He became her quiet anchor. And Evelyn, she watched, learning. One afternoon, while Sienna laughed freely, for the first time in months, Evelyn found Mark sweeping the hallway. "Why bubbles?" she asked softly. He leaned on the broom, thoughtful. "Because life feels too heavy for kids sometimes. Bubbles remind them that light things still exist. That not everything has to sink." Her eyes softened. And just like that, something shifted inside her, respect, connection, something warm she hadn't felt in years. But life, like always, has a way of testing new beginnings. One rainy evening, Mark received a call. The school board wanted to meet. Apparently someone had reported inappropriate over-involvement between a janitor and a student. An accusation with no truth, but dangerous enough to cost him his job. Mark felt his world crack. He had already lost too much in life, his wife, his stable job years ago, his dreams. He couldn't lose this too. He couldn't lose the one place where he felt he mattered. Evelyn heard the rumor that night. And without hesitation, she stormed into the meeting the next morning, her voice sharp as thunder. "You're questioning the one person who helped my daughter when no one else did? The man who saved her from an anxiety collapse? The one person she trusts?" The board fell silent. Evelyn continued, "If you punish him, you punish kindness. And I will not allow that." They backed down instantly. Not because she was wealthy, but because she was right, and because her fierce truth left no room for doubt. When Mark stepped out of the office, shaken but relieved, Evelyn was waiting. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," she said softly. He smiled, tired, grateful. "You didn't have to do that for me." "Yes," she answered gently. "I did." Their eyes held longer than before, warm, trusting, fragile. The world around them didn't change, but something inside them certainly had. Chapter 2 began slowly, quietly. Sienna continued to grow stronger, her panic attacks fewer. Mark continued to guide her. And in those small everyday moments, something beautiful formed, not a romance at first, but an understanding. Two parents trying